Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I am Stephanie Cantab. I'm the clinician, the mental health clinician that works for the Town of Easton. This is my partner. I'll let him introduce myself because you'll say nicer things about yourself.
Mobster account or Chris account. Patrolman with the Town of Easton. I work as a community outreach officer. I work with Stephanie right now 2 days a week. Every Tuesday and Wednesday we work together. And kind of our focus is mental health, substance abuse, addiction, some domestic violence, kind of starting to get into that field. But we essentially do follow-ups, assist anyone in our community any way we can. We've kind of, we'll do whatever kind of gets forwarded to me or Stephanie. We'll go out, meet with people, and help them anyway. We partner with the fire department. We partner with Tracy, financial benefits coordinator. I think I got your title right.
Deputy.
You got it wrong.
Deputy director. I'm sorry.
It is now the deputy director. So
That's true. But, we're a good little team.
yeah.
Good Town of Easton, just trying to support the residents any way we can.
Yeah, so a lot of our work that we do specifically is when anything comes in through fire or police that might be substance use related, mental health related, a psych emergency, it gets forwarded to us. We then go out and follow up and meet with people, see where they're at, see what they might need for resources, and we continuously do that. We'll go out as many times as we need to. We just try to partner together in a way that's a different approach. When most people see police or fire, he's in uniform. We don't do that when we go out. This is kind of how we dress. When in an unmarked car, we try to have a little different approach of trying to just get people some help. So we know lots of treatment providers, half the ones out there, and we really just try to meet people where they're at, do some harm reduction, provide Narcan, drive them to detox if we need to a program, educate their family, get their family involved in local services. So it's been about a little over a year now, and
February
along.
will be 2 years. So hopefully
we'll do all we can.
full time sooner rather than later.
Yeah, the goal is to be full time, both of us together. So.
But it's good change. A lot of area departments are doing it. I know Mansfield does it. They call it the POP team. Norton does it. A few more I know have requested information from my chief on what Stephanie and I do. So it's definitely growing in policing, and I think you're seeing a positive impact. People that we would get calls for a lot, repeat calls, and it sometimes might just be a nuisance thing. They're having a neighbor dispute, or they might just be going through a difficult time. They think something's happening. It's not. We kind of go out, meet them. There's some people we've met with weekly for months, and just that half-hour conversation once a week is kind of cool things off for the fire and police side of things, where we're not constantly going out there and stuck with what do we do.
Yeah.
And we kind of work with them and find out what it is, whether it's mental health or substance abuse or anything. Whatever they need, we'll do.
I will say, just for information, we log and keep track of overdoses, all kinds of stuff, and this year it's been down. I will say that so far.
Overdoses, yeah. Knock on wood.
Yep, knock on wood.
Overdoses
So that's a
drastically
good
down.
trend that I like to see. So I'm happy to see that for Easton anyway. That has been less and less fatal. So to me, that's a win all day, every day.
So the last 4 years, we hovered around like 25, 30
A year,
overdoses a year, and I don't think we're there. We might be at 10 tops.
I'm not even sure actually.
But
Maybe 7 or 8.
the system
last
we
time I checked.
use, SIMS, Critical Incident Management System, it's Bristol County, Plymouth County, I think it's expanding now in Mass. But
About Mass.
you do behavioral health or substance abuse, and we were joking the other day, we're like, this is all behavioral, it's not even substance abuse anymore. When it first started, it was just substance abuse, and now you kind of see where the shift is kind of happening in society, right? We had the opioid pandemic, and obviously substance abuse, and now it's just more mental health, so let's solve that
those
issue
two can't go hand in hand, but we're seeing it a little bit differently now than we did a couple years back. So welcome everybody, and we have a couple speakers tonight. So I want to introduce Kevin Rosario, who's going to speak in a minute. Yay! But Kevin Rosario serves as Senior Director of Community Engagement for New England Medical Group, an adult and adolescent mental health and substance use outpatient provider in Massachusetts. Kevin also is a founder of Addiction Consulting and Education Services, ACES, an educational consulting firm focused on adolescent prevention, education, and anti-stigma initiatives. Mr. Rosario is a nationally certified intervention professional and has worked in the field since 2012. And Kevin is very passionate about adolescent substance use prevention and has presented to over 8,000 students and parents over the last 8 years. He is always available to provide guidance, direction to those seeking help, and often draws from his lived experience to offer a ray of hope when it's needed most. So, thank you for being here.
My inside voice is loud, so
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're good. Your inside voice is good.
I don't need to speak up, trust me. But thank you, Stephanie and Chris, for all the work that you do. I do a lot of public speaking, and I have to be honest, like this month and this type of event is always the most uncomfortable for me, because I know often the crowd is people that are mourning, that have lost people, right, and that are just going through it. So I always like pray and try to like ask God to clear away all my stuff and my crazy, because I'm still a crazy person even though I'm in recovery, and left unchecked my mind can like run down the street and do loop-de-loops. But the truth is, I don't have any magic words. There's nothing I'm gonna say that's gonna ever heal the broken heart. I've been doing this a long time, and I know people that are still not okay who lost someone a decade ago. But the truth is that that's not my role here today. My role here today is to be hopefully a little delivery message of hope, right? That often people that have lost someone also know others that are still struggling, right? So like, while we remember and mourn and pray for those people that we've lost, and more importantly, often provide supports to the ones that have left behind to deal with that grief, we also want to extend resources. Like, hey, if you know someone else that's struggling, there are options available, and people do get well. So I just got to say that to myself, because the people that know me know, like, I live up here. I'm like a high volume, high level, ADHD with no caffeine necessary kind of guy. Like and I'm excited about recovery. I really am, like, but then I come into these things, and I've spoken a lot of learner copes, and it's like the same kind of energy, like, families are hurting and they're struggling and they're sad, and I'm like, yeah, God is good, you know what I'm saying? I'm living the best life, just came back from Costa Rica, and people are like, you know, so I just hard, because I am excited, I am grateful, you know. My name's Kevin Rosario. I'm a person in long-term recovery. That's how I'm supposed to start, right? And what that means to me is, like, I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke weed, and I don't use any mind or mood altering substances, and I haven't since July 2nd, 2010. Grateful. Thank you. It's been 14 years, you know, and I've had a lot of cool experiences. I could talk about a lot of different things, but what I really want to talk about is kind of like entry-level recovery messages, like, all right, what happened? Where did it take you? And what did you do to get out? I think is the biggest important part of the message. You know, I'm a big 12-step guy. I got into recovery through treatment centers, state-funded, Mass Health, Detox, CSS, TSS, Halfway House, and ultimately I got a sponsor and went through the 12 steps, and that's the thing that had the biggest profound impact on my life. And they say, you know, like, let's focus on the solution, not the mess, right? I got into recovery at 31 years old. I can tell you 25 years worth of war stories. That's easy. I have more experience in the chaos than I do in the solution, but like, my mess doesn't necessarily help anyone, right? So I will touch a little bit on what it was like and where it took me, so maybe you can identify, but I want to focus more on, like, well, how the hell did you get out, right? If you are someone that knows someone, and sometimes in these rooms someone has their own personal issue, the question is, how do you get out? What was the thing? The $1 million question I get from the family who still has an active addicted loved one is, what did it take? You know, what was the thing that happened? And it's often not just a thing, you know. My journey started way before drugs and alcohol, and I do a lot of public speaking, and I actually say drugs are not the problem. And people are like, how can you say that? My kid's addicted to fentanyl, this one and that. Drugs are not the problem. If drugs are the problem, then they'd go to detox and they'd be fine after detox. The real problem for someone like me is when you take drugs and alcohol away. How I feel, how I think, how I behave, how I'm not comfortable in my own skin, right? I don't know how to cope with life without drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol were my best friend. They were the thing that probably helped me not kill myself or kill other people. Because if I had a buzz and I was sedated, I was less dangerous, you know, to myself and others. And so where does that really come from? And that's why I'm passionate about prevention work. And I started a consulting business, and I speak in schools, and I do a lot of cool stuff, and I love that work. And I really believe we got to start talking to kids in 5th grade. And why is because it's not drugs and alcohol that's the problem, right? And again, I've been in recovery 14 years. I've heard thousands of speakers, and I can tell you, yeah, some people have a sports injury. Yeah, you got, Nana from Marshfield that started drinking at 45 after a divorce. Like, that happens too. But like the 85 percentile of speakers say, I smoked my first joint when I was 13, 14, 15. I drank my first beer when I was 13, 14, 15. Their first mushroom, their first, whatever it is, that is the most common pocket of when experimental use starts, right? And it usually doesn't go full-blown heroin, fentanyl addiction. It could take years for that progression to build up. But they talk about 7th and 8th grade, maybe freshman year is when it started. So we need to get them before that, right? And my own personal experience is like my issues started in like 5th grade, maybe before that. I grew up, and my father, God bless him, he's a good man, and we had a great relationship now. But like, he was a Portuguese immigrant. He moved to America when he was like 19 years old. There was a big civil war going on in Portugal at the time, and my vavá, my grandfather, I got twin aunts, my father, they all came to this country, obviously not speaking English, and like a lot of immigrants, tried to find a way and try to find a better life. And he met my mother. My mother's like classic American, Leave It to Beaver, Lifetime Movie Network, Christmas all year type of chick, you know what I'm saying? And so growing up, my father went offshore fishing. That was like the first gig that he got, right? And my mother was like always like the legit job. She retired after like 30 years of like head payroll clerk for the city New Bedford Fire Department, right? And she didn't make a lot of money, but she had good bennies, and she would make $400 stretch, and we'd have grilled cheese sandwich and whatever. She was just like, she kept it together. And Dad was like the kind of Kevin Rosario, wild stallion, Portuguese immigrant growing up in the 70s, rock and roll, cocaine, and you know what I'm saying? He was that guy. And I say that to say, I didn't have a super consistent, stable childhood because he'd be gone fishing for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Then he'd come back. He may or may not have money, and then he'd be gone. And so mom like really held it down. My mother's mother, my grandmother, really held it down. And at 31 years old, when I finally got into recovery, I would have never admitted that as a teenager, but as an adult looking back, like that did have a negative impact on me. I did not have a close relationship with my father. Even when he transitioned out of fishing and took on a painting job, which is also seasonal, which is inconsistent income, right? There was always this kind of tension in the house over the money. My mother held it down. She was solid. She had the steady job. And my father was kind of like not a consistent provider, which created this fighting. There's no other word for it. They'd be fighting. And I remember one time, I had to be 9 years old. And my mother was fighting. My father was yelling. And I don't remember what it was. I was 9 years old. It was probably about money. And my father leaves and he slams the door. And my mother's crying. And I come out to my mother and I say, Mom, why don't you just leave him? Right? I mean, how many years of this does it have to build up where a kid tells the mother to leave the father? Because I had no beef with my father. We went fishing, we were okay. But he was super anti-emotional, no hugs, no high fives. Like, the closest contact I got was like a slap in the ass with a spatula once in a while. You know what I'm saying? Sorry if that was off color. But, if you're old school Portuguese, Italian, a lot of, how those families are, right? It's like they don't show you love, and he was like anti-emotional. But I wish no ill on him, but I wanted to protect my mother. And if she was going to be miserable and unhappy because of my father, I'd rather them separate. And then I'd still love them separately. And my mother looked at me, and I know she meant well when she said this, but she goes, oh no, Kevin, I would never leave your father because of you and Nicholas. I have a brother that's 3 years younger than me. And I know in her heart, because she's a sweet human, she was trying to be solid and keep the family together. In her heart, she thought that was the right thing to do. However, I walked away from that. My mom will be unhappy the rest of her life because of me, not for me, right? We moved from the South End, New Bedford, to the West End. I get put in a school that I don't belong in. It's a school across the street from the projects. It's mostly African-American and Spanish. I'm like a white kid from a 2-parent home. My parents owned a 2-family home, and that should be good, except I was so different from the demographic of my friends that I felt different. I felt like I didn't fit in. I felt uncomfortable in my own skin in 5th grade, and I got bullied in 5th grade by the local kid from the projects who you know, had a rougher life than I had. And then I remember like that created a lot of fear in me. I remember at a young age being paralyzed by this bully, and like some other cool kid like saved me. And I just like, oh man, it was like, I never wanted to feel like that again. And then in 6th grade, like I fell in love with this young lady, right? It sounds corny, right? But it's true. And I can admit that today as an adult, like I was like all smitten over this girl in my 6th grade class. And I remember because I saved my report card money to get her a little birthday present. Her birthday is the first week of April. I'm 45 years old. I still remember this. So trauma is trauma, people. You know what I'm saying? Don't judge me. Take your own inventory. So 6th grade, I got this little ring in my pocket that I bought from like an Ocean State job lot. It was the best I could do. You know what I'm saying? I had like 22 bucks. And I come to class in 6th grade and I'm consumed with fear, projection. What if I get rejected? The kids are gonna laugh at me. 6th grade, you're stuck with the same people for 6 hours a day, right? So like, I'm not doing this in the morning. It could go bad. I'm screwed. You know what I'm saying? So like, all day, I'm trying to gas myself up to like give this girl a ring and tell her that I like her for her birthday. And like, I don't know, sometime around lunch, after lunch, I don't remember, but like this other young boy came up to her and was like, oh, happy birthday. Kissed her right on the lips, right in front of me. Crushed, dude. Crushed. You can act tough if you want, because I acted tough after that. But the truth is, I was crushed. And I like kept it together for the last 2 hours of the day. And my mom picked me up. I was like, "Ma, she doesn't love me." You know what I'm saying? And now, if you've never done therapy or inner child work, I probably sound absolutely ridiculous, and that's okay. I'm not here to impress you or make friends, right? This is my truth. At 31 years old, when I went back through my life and took an honest look at myself, that being bullied, having the toxic family relationship, and having the girl that I like kiss another boy effed me up, for lack of a better word. So then what happened? When I left 6th grade and went to junior high school, I made an inner vow, which is a word I learned from a therapist doing inner child work. I made an inner vow that I said, I will never be bullied again, and I will never be picked on again. And so what happens is, leaving 6th grade to 7th grade, I start to create new characters. I'm putting on new masks. I'm learning what defense mechanisms and coping skills do I need to not be bullied and not be picked on. In the first week in 7th grade, I started making friends with the 8th graders so they can protect me, right? And then in 7th grade, I'm like knee high to a grasshopper, right? I was a late bloomer. I didn't crack 6 feet till after high school. So if you saw me in 7th grade, I was a little pyong. I was like this big. And I'm like, oh, you know what I'm saying? I'm Kevin Rosario, baby. I don't really do relationships. You know what I'm saying? I'm more of like a no strings attached type of guy. Like, if I look back on the pictures of myself, it's so ridiculous. But like, I convinced myself that like I was like a pimp type, player type folk, like in 7th grade. And so I know I'm going on and on, and I'm not telling war stories, but I think this gives more insight to the average person with substance use disorder, and maybe even mental illness, than telling you that I've been arrested 12 times, I've been jumped, I've been shot at, I've been stabbed and punctured lung, I've been overdosed 3 times, I turned 25 in the Dartmouth House of Correction, I was on methadone, I was on Suboxone, I've been in 9D. Okay, 3 DUIs, who cares? Like, none of that really matters. That's just part of my story. That doesn't have to be part of your story. Like, the real thing that I think personally, you can talk to me after if you have a different opinion, but like, I think it's like well, how did that happen in the first place? How did you get there? And if you don't understand how a person got there, you can never help them get well. So it is important, because in 7th grade now I'm a playboy, now I'm a class clown, now I'm a tough guy, now I'm talking crap to everybody, now I'm hanging around with older kids, right? And these are the things I did to protect myself from being hurt. And then hanging around with those 8th graders one day, they said, hey, do you want to smoke a joint? The joint was secondary to the fact that I had insecurity, I had low self-esteem, I was full of fear, I had anxiety, I was ADHD to the max unmedicated, right? I didn't feel safe, I wasn't happy, I felt less than, I had all these issues going on, and like acting like a tough guy, acting like a playboy, hanging around with older kids, talking the talk, walking the walk, acting like a little homie yo-yo, you know what I'm saying, like MTV Raps, it made me feel safe. And so one day when I'm walking to school, walk into a New Bedford High football game with the 8th graders who have cousins that are already in high school, and the joint comes around, I just say yes because I want to be accepted by this group. I didn't know, it was the first time I ever been around weed. I wasn't looking for it, I wasn't seeking it, and they just gave it to me, and I remember I didn't get high the first time I smoked weed. I don't remember having an effect. The effect I got was accepted by the 8th graders and now the high school kids, and that felt good, right? and that felt good. Then it became more of a thing for effect, because I remember now moving forward, now we're smoking weed and drinking on the weekends, and like in the middle of the school week in 7th grade, I already can't wait to go to Sean's house to smoke weed this weekend. It's something that like we already start thinking about. And then when you're hanging around with older kids, all of a sudden they got like the mescaline or the mushrooms, and like different things start to come around. And I just experimented with different things because people that I liked were doing them, you know. And I can fast forward through the mess because that's how it started. By the time I left junior high school, I was already selling weed. By the time I got to high school, I started getting arrested at 16 years old for open container. And then now I'm a daily marijuana smoker. I'm a heavy drinker on the weekend. And then next thing you know, like people are like, oh, here's Valium, here's Xanax. Oh, great. Now I'm drinking and smoking and using Xanax and Valium. And now, like, say, middle of high school, I think I'm 17 or so. Maybe I was already a senior because I was a July baby. But somewhat towards the end of high school, perks started going around. The old regular perks, you know, 543s, 512, 602 endo sets, like, you know, all of that. And everybody took those and nobody got sick. You take a perk or two, drink a beer, smoke a joint, no one got sick. No one got addicted. No one stole from their family. It was just like an additional thing that we did on a Friday. And then 1 year later, OxyContin came out. And they were like, these are just like perks, but without the aspirin. And I'm like, great, who the hell needs aspirin? You know what I'm saying? And I started using OxyContin. And within a year, I was full-blown addicted. Within a few months after that, I was sniffing heroin. With a few months after that, I was shooting heroin. And I was like, what the hell just happened? I went from being the cool kid with the Cadillac who always had a job, who sold weed, that went to parties, held keg parties. Like, I was popular. I was junior class president just because I thought it would be funny to run for class president, right? The school was pissed. They did not find it funny because I was a known drug dealer and criminal, but I was. And all of a sudden I went from it's fun and it's a party to I am so physically sick every day. I cannot function. I cannot operate. I cannot do anything without getting something to get off E. Like, I don't know, it just happened so fast. Like, I never got full-blown addicted to alcohol. I never could not function without marijuana or even perks for that matter. Even Xanax here and there, even Coke, even mushrooms, ecstasy. I went through all those different experimentations. But once the opiate, once specifically the OxyContin got me, it was a wrap. I'm not going to a funeral. I'm not going to work. I'm not going on a date. And it just, it became too expensive. Like, I thought I was cool. I always had a car, I always had a job, I always sold drugs, and I was like Kevin Rosario. I thought I was a cool kid. And then next thing you know, like, you're sniffing $200-300 a day worth of pills. It's just not sustainable. And now the people that put me on a few months ahead of me, they're now sniffing heroin. And it's like, oh, I'll never sniff heroin. That's nasty. That's disgusting. I'm a drug dealer, right? When you get sick enough and someone's got heroin and you got $5, you're going to take a line of heroin. And then what happened for me, like, I tried to fight it because I'm like, I don't want to be a heroin addict. That's like ugly. Like, OCs were socially acceptable. People were doing them everywhere. It wasn't a big deal. But it became like a business decision, right? I got a job. I sell drugs. I'm risking my life every day. Like, if I switch to heroin, I'd go from like $300 a day to maybe $25 or $50 a day. And that's the lie that I told myself. Like, switching to heroin will make it more cost effective. And then what happens by nature of biology and building a tolerance, like, within 3 to 6 months, I'm sniffing $200 a day worth of heroin. It's like, damn, what the hell happened, right? And guess what? That kid that was sniffing, he's now shooting heroin. Oh, no, I'll never shoot heroin. I'll never shoot heroin. I don't think anyone ever plans on shooting heroin, right? One day, I'm super sick. I got no connects, nothing to sell, no money, like no hustle, nothing to steal, and I'm just down and out. And now that dude is like, Kev, if you shoot a $5 bag, you'll be okay. And I'm like, all right, bro, just do it to me, right? You can't even do it to yourself. You have to have someone else do it to you. If you think about that, like IV heroin use, someone has to teach it to you. And that's how sick we get in those circles, that we're probably cool or friendly with someone, and we teach them how to intravenously shoot drugs. And I don't blame that guy for doing that. You know, like, I asked him for it. But that's pretty sick if you think about it, right? You don't go to a doctor, they don't teach you. You learn from some other person who's sick. And again, I got immediately very high off that $5 bag, but I'm like, no way, I can't shoot heroin. And I fought it for like a few weeks or a month. I don't remember the timeline. But then it got to the point where I literally could not afford to sniff heroin anymore. And I went to full-blown shooting heroin. And once you cross that line, man, dude, it's just, it gets ugly fast. It gets ugly fast. It's absolutely unable. It's just not sustainable. And now selling drugs and a job. Next thing you know, I'm stealing from stores for the drug dealer. I'm stealing from my mother. I'm selling everything I own. And then what comes next after that was like methadone for me, you know, and the blessing. And I was thinking about the statistics, and I'm not trying to take away from the great work you're doing. This is a whole statewide, the statistics have gone down. And that's in part to the fact that a few years ago, they were really emphasizing to get everybody on Suboxone or methadone, right? And whatever my personal opinion is about that, at a minimum, it drastically reduces overdose death. So phase one to stop the people from dying is get them on MAT, great, but guess what? It doesn't solve the problem. Because if you take a person like me with trauma, anxiety, ADHD, mental illness, and you just put me on enough meds of whatever sort so that I don't need to use drugs, I still have mental illness, trauma, no coping skills, I'm not okay. So what you see is, seems like a spike in mental illness, but people are not dying. So that is a success, but it doesn't mean the people that are not dying are necessarily getting well. But they're still alive, so there's hope for them, you know? I don't know why that made me emotional. I used to be so like psychotic about that because they would just push Suboxone on everybody. And like, I'm like, okay, get them on Suboxone so they don't die. But what else? Because I just told you in depth that drugs and alcohol are not my problem. So getting me off drugs is not the solution, and putting me on another drug so that I don't die is not the solution. That's a step. It's a tool. It's a phase in the process of actually getting well. But the people that I love and respect that have helped me are typically people that have done the inside work, have looked at the anger, have looked at the fear, have looked at the trauma. And I know people that are on long-term MAT and they're happy and they're successful who also do the inside work. They're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to, I'm not saying everyone has to get off, but I know people on MAT that are absolutely insane and they're miserable and they're not fun to be around and they got sex addictions and gambling problems. Okay, great. It's like whack-a-mole, right? So they're not going to die maybe today on fentanyl, but they're still not well at all, right? And that's why when I talk about recovery and I get excited about recovery, it's like recovery is not about not using drugs. Real recovery is about healing. Real recovery is about changing behaviors and not just learning, but unlearning a lot of old belief systems and a lot of unhealthy coping skills and learning new healthy coping skills. Because this is my experience, and I'll shut up. Happy people generally don't use drugs. Happy, healthy, not bullshit, social media, look at me, happy and dying on the inside, but genuinely content people. And it doesn't mean that everything is good. I've been content when my life is on fire, and I've been angry when I had all the material things. So those things don't always line up. But generally, people that are content in the storm, when things are good, when they're okay, they're less likely to have suicidal thoughts. They're less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol because they're okay. So recovery needs to be about helping people become okay, right? And it's not a one and done. For me, I believe that I'm a super sick, super sensitive dude. I am still in recovery 14 years later. I pray every morning, pray every night. I go to 2 meetings a week. I have a sponsor. I sponsor other men. I'm going through the 12 steps again. I do a commitment once a month into a detox. I do things like this. Like, my disease is not gone. It has been arrested. I'm in remission. I'm in recovery. And I truly believe if I stop praying, stop going to meetings, and stop treating my disease, I might not use right away, but I become very angry, very anxious, very unhappy, and all my behaviors start to resurface. And then I'm in trouble. Because once, and I've done this before, you know, in 2004, and I won't get into it, but like at one attempt of sobriety or abstinence before was the car, the jewelry, the girl, the rental houses. I had all the stuff, and my parents were so proud of me, but I did no inside work. And I had all this nice stuff, and everybody was proud of me, and my brain said, oh, look how good you're doing. Look how far you've come. You can probably just have a few beers. Stay away from cocaine. Don't do heroin. You'll be okay, right? That's the insanity of alcoholism and addiction, is that my brain starts producing lies and tries to take me out. So now I know I like nice things. I drive a Cadillac now. It's great. I love Cadillacs. I want a big house. I want nice jewelry. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I also know that those things in themselves will not ever give me happiness. You know, so to wrap it up today, what I did was I was broken. I was sad. I wanted to kill myself, but didn't have the courage to kill myself. I had all those detoxes, all those arrests, all those episodes of my mom crying, and I was just spiritually and emotionally broken. Nothing crazier on the outside happened. I was still collecting unemployment. I was still living in mom's house. I was still relatively safe. I was just emotionally and spiritually bankrupt. And I was like, I'm done. And I've said I'm done before. The difference is when I went to treatment this time, I accepted help. I accepted the suggestions that people made, and I did what I didn't want to do. Instead of going home, I went to further treatment. Instead of going to the comfortable sober house, I went to the men's halfway house in Norton, and I went through the 12 steps, which I did not want to do. I didn't believe in God. I hated AA. I hated NA. I hated people that try to hold my hand. Don't hug me, bro. I'm not putting $1 in the basket. Like, I was not okay in early recovery. But I just kept going. I kept going in spite of not believing and not liking it and not being comfortable. I kept going to meetings. I kept praying. I kept doing all the weird stuff they told me to do. And then like one day I was like, man, it's been like 9 days that I haven't thought about getting high. Like when I had that realization that I'm doing this weird stuff that don't make sense, that's uncomfortable, and I actually haven't thought about getting high, I had buy-in. I'm like, oh, we got to keep doing this. And then it went from not thinking about it to like actually being happy. And like going through the 12 steps, I made all my amends. I was out in the world. I was looking around. There was the sunsets and the flowers. And like, as corny as it sounds, dude, like I would look at a leaf and I'd be like, look at the veins in that leaf, bro. Like, that's God in there. I was like a trippy hippie acid, like awakening, because my spirit was clean. My mind was decluttered. And I was like genuinely like appreciating the things that were around. I could see for the first time. I remember driving through my own city and I was like, Ma, what happened to that building? She's like, that building got wrecked like 6 years ago. And I was like 10 months sober, and it was the first time I even noticed that a major building like in my neighborhood was gone, because you just become blacked out in mucus when you're lost in addiction. So as a result of recovery, I've had a blessed life. I have 2 beautiful kids. Things didn't work out with their mom, but she's a good mom, and I got 50-50 legal custody and 40% visitation custody. They're smart, they're healthy, they're happy. I'm a present dad today. I've been able to fix my credit. I got a good credit score. I've been able to like partner with a friend. We bought a multifamily. I went to school. I got an associate's degree, I got a bachelor's degree, and just this May I wrapped up an MBA in healthcare management. This is like a New Bedford drug addict, criminal that should be dead or in jail. And I have a beautiful, successful life, and I'm not special. I'm probably only as successful because of the people I align myself with. I hang around with people that don't just settle for just not shooting heroin. Okay, great, bro, you're clean. Good for you. Now what? Let's go. Let's help people. Great. Let's buy a house. Let's start a business. Like, what else? You know, I have good people around me that have continued to encourage me to grow. And I have a nice car. I have good credit. I make decent money. I have nice stuff. But the things that I have that are most important besides my beautiful, healthy kids is, one, my mother sleeps at night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have the keys to her house. Mm-hmm. She's my biggest fan, sharing all my posts, right? and people think I'm a mama's boy. I'm like, you have no idea. I was a terrorist. I was the black sheep of my family. My little brother was the mommy's boy. I was the cast out criminal drug addict, drug dealer son. I'm like that now because of recovery. So that I wouldn't trade that for the world. And the second thing is, I'm generally pretty happy. Through the breakup, the child support, the custody battle, I lost the house, my uncle died, my grandmother died, responsees have died, my mother just went through cancer, she just finished a chemo treatment. Like in 14 years, it hasn't been linear. It's been ups and downs, and there's been some heavy-hearted stuff. But I genuinely have been pretty okay. I've traveled the world, I've been to different countries, I can be present today, and it's all because of, I believe, God, because of a power greater than myself. I'm not super religious, some people are. I believe in the power of the universe that connects everything, that connects all humans, that's all love, and just there's an infinite supply of it, you know. And so I've dedicated my life to going out there and carrying that message. That's how ACES started. Now I work at New England Medical Group. It's an extension of my recovery. We have outpatient services in Brookline and Milford and Hingham and Norwell. We do adults, we do adolescents, we do animal-assisted therapy with the kids, and like that's my passion. Get a 13-year-old kid with mental health issues, suicidal ideation. They might not even be using substances yet, but because I believe substances, drugs are not the problem, let's get those kiddos, right, and get them help and get them support and let them do some of that work so that they don't need to use drugs and alcohol. And the last thing I'll say is this, and it's not mine, I stole it from someone else, but he said, the biggest gift of my recovery is that I've created a life that I no longer have to escape. And I was like, yeah, that's dope. So that's all I got. Thank you, guys.
So our next speaker is going to be Matt Wilson. Matt Wilson is a previous resident of Easton and alumni of Oliver Ames High School. That is Easton High School, for those that don't know. We're just fancy and we call it Oliver Ames. Matt received a bachelor's degree in wildlife and conservation biology from the University of New Hampshire in 2018. Matt entered into recovery in 2021 and since then has been an active participant in the recovery community, returning to school in 2023 to get his LADC. Matt currently works as a clinician at Rockland Recovery Treatment Centers and plans to continue higher education to provide better care for the individuals he works with. Come on up.
Hi everybody, I'm Matty. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
What's up, man?
Kevin, it's going to be a tough act to follow, but I will try my best. Considering this is Overdose Awareness Month, I wanted to start by just honoring some of the people that I personally have lost in the last 3 years to substance abuse and overdoses. Eddie Walsh, Danny Caron, Ethan Mondor, Justin Doyle, Mike Lahane, Jimmy Twombly, John Anastas, Timothy Barker, Dustin Porowski, Carissa Clement, Matt Petrosani, Frankie Raymond, Edward Hubbicks, Nick Polito, David Chu, Sean McGonigal, and Bobby Stroud. All of those people have had a profound impact on me, both prior to me getting sober and since getting sober. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. It's very, a lot of similar echoes to Kevin's. I got sober July 12th, 2021. July is a good month to get sober. And really a lot of those same themes, right? I grew up in the UK. I was born in Lisburn, Northern Ireland. I moved to England when I was around 6 and then moved to the United States when I was 14. And through that transition, obviously that was sort of a big disturbance in how I was growing up, but things weren't good there. And I really was offered a beautiful new opportunity to reinvent myself. And that's every kid's dream. Go somewhere where nobody knows you and just reinvent the wheel. I failed to do that. I didn't get the memo. I showed up and I was just myself, insecure, scared, low self-esteem, unsure of myself, struggling with my sexuality, all sorts of things that sort of compounded into this self-hate that I sort of carried around with me. I struggled a lot with alienation, and that's not to say that I didn't have friends. I did have friends. I had a lot of great friends. But I felt so othered and so outcast and so different from everybody else growing up that I didn't really know what to do with it. That sort of, carried through high school. And I always talk about the fact that before drugs and alcohol, I had other vices, right? We talked a little bit about the fact that mental health and substance use kind of go hand in hand, and that was my experience as well. I struggled with self-harm, right? I struggled with suicidal ideation. I struggled with isolation. I played video games for way too long, separating myself from other people because I was afraid, right? I had that anxiety. I didn't feel like I fit in, and I didn't know what else to do with that. In high school, again, probably around, I think I had my first drink around 14 or 15, and then I had that first joint around 16. And the thing that the substances did for me, more than just get me high, is they allow me to feel comfortable in my own skin for the first time. Right? When I smoked that joint, my social circle went from maybe 4 or 5 people to all of a sudden I'm friends with 20 or 30 people. All of a sudden the people in my class that I wanted to hang out with but was too afraid to because I felt different, well, now they want to hang out. Right now I'm getting invited to parties and I'm going out and doing stuff and having sleepovers in town pool when I'm supposed to be over at a friend's house and doing all sorts of stupid stuff. And I'm going to try my best not to swear. Sorry, it's a thing. So if I do, I apologize. The substance allowed me to feel comfortable in my own skin, right? It allowed me to break out of that anxiety I had. It allowed me to make friends, make connections. And what I realized is when I put a substance in my body, it changes how I feel about myself. Great, let's try them all, right? It was sort of the hat that I then put on. It was pretty quick for me, the progression. Like I said, I had started smoking weed sophomore year of high school. By senior year, I had already done, LSD and cocaine. I was drinking a lot, all that kind of stuff. And then very quickly when I got into college, that alcoholism progressed. I was very much one of those people that was willing to try anything. And so I'd be like the guinea pig. We'd get something, I'd give it a go. And again, like this is all sort of tied into my fear of like, if I don't do this thing, I might not be able to make friends, right? Or people won't think that I'm cool, or I'm going to feel uncomfortable and I'm not going to be able to show up and be fun and like that guy that everybody wants me to be. So I'm just going to fall back on the substance. Very quickly, again, things got out of control. During college, benzos came around. I was using a lot of benzos. That's the Ativan and the Xanax. I was drinking a lot on top of that. And I ended up having a couple of seizures from withdrawal. Luckily, by the time I went to the hospital, all the drugs were out of my system and they said it was stress induced. So I got a little golden ticket to lie to my family and say that, oh, I'm just like really stressed and like, don't stress me out because then I might have another seizure. My mom's here, so I feel really bad saying what I said for her. Sorry, Mom.
And I believed it all, by the way.
Yeah, that's the classic manipulation, right? I was able to get away with things because I sort of held up this facade that I was like the good kid, right? And I'm like doing okay in school. I was doing pretty well in college. I was showing up. I was just pretty good at lying, I feel like, for the most part. Yeah? Okay, good. So I ended up having these couple of seizures. I got that sort of get out of jail free card. And then immediately right after, I went abroad to New Zealand for a semester abroad. I thought that maybe going there and engaging in this program that I was, all about was going to help alleviate me of that substance use, but it didn't, right? While I was there, I continued to drink in excess, just the way that I was. Continued to sneak alcohol. And unfortunately, on my 21st birthday, I ended up in the hospital with a 0.375 BAC. I almost got kicked out of the program. And of course, like my beautiful timing with everything, the day that I ended up in the hospital was the day that the dean of my college came out to visit. So my first interaction with her was sitting down in a room and her being like, what the hell are you doing? Right? Like you're representing the school and you're in the hospital. And again, I came up with some sort of lie that, oh, well, I hadn't eaten much that day and I'm on this new medication. And like, I was just trying to figure out like how much I could drink and how much I couldn't. And they told me if I drank one more time while I was there, I would get kicked out and I would fail the entire semester. So I started drinking really carefully, right? Really cautiously, in private. When everybody was asleep, I'd sneak out and I'd steal other people's booze because I couldn't buy my own. And like that's what alcoholism is, right? For those of you that have not experienced it, it's insidious. It doesn't matter what consequence I'm faced with. I'm going to find a way to do what I need to do because I'm so uncomfortable in myself. Right? Okay, cool. I can't drink anymore, so I'll sneak that and I'll just steal my friend's Adderall while he's asleep. Right? The Adderall that he needs to actually like do the work that he needs to do. Yeah, no, I'll just take that for my own. And I'll go and I'll steal some Xanax from Andrea because I know that she has that in her cabin. Right? Like that's the kind of insidious nature of addiction. I'm not thinking about the fact that I could lose out on a whole semester's worth of tuition. I just want to feel okay. Fast forward, I graduate, I do all that kind of stuff. I move out and basically what ends up happening is that my partner that I was with at the time had finally got sick of my stuff, my behavior. See, there it is, I caught myself. Finally got sick of my behavior and told me that I was an alcoholic and I needed to go to treatment and that he couldn't deal with me anymore. I told him, you're crazy. I just like to party. Like, you're no fun. You're so controlling. You're so abusive. You're so manipulative. Whatever. You can leave. And he did leave. And my roommates left as well because they also couldn't deal with my alcoholic behavior. And there I was alone in this apartment. And I remembered one time, sophomore year of college, that I had tried methamphetamine. And now that all these people that I cared about were out of my life, I was like, perfect. I can start doing methamphetamine again. Right? Surely that can't hurt me and that'll be a great time. So for those of you that don't know about methamphetamine, it's one of the most powerful drugs on the planet. Heroin and cocaine typically release between 500 to 700 units of dopamine. Meth releases 1,200 units of dopamine. So it's incredibly addictive and it's also the devil. If you know anybody that has struggled with meth use, it gets dark really, really fast. So for me, I'm using meth. I'm working at this gas station. Right? I have a college degree and I'm working at a gas station as like a manager. Because again, I don't see value in myself. I don't think I'm capable of anything better than just staying local, being able to drink, and like, cool, I work where I can get my booze. Perfect. So I'm working there. I start doing really well, right? I go from cashier to manager within like a year because of the meth, right? I'm like on it. I'm like, everything is filled and it's neat and I'm cleaning and I'm like, I'm great at this, right? Meth is so good for me. This is like curing my ADHD. I'm like locked in, phenomenal. And you know, it started as weekend use. I would just use on the weekends. That progressed to, you know, weekends and like the Wednesday just to get me through the week. And then it was like Mondays and Wednesdays and the weekends. And then it was any day that ended in Y, right? And then I'm like going in the back at work to like smoke a bowl of meth, hoping that a customer doesn't walk through the door, right? Paranoid that someone's gonna know that I'm high. And I also start gambling, right? We had scratch tickets at work and I started gambling and things got pretty bad pretty fast with that. I ended up getting fired. And I had to like pay them back all the money that I stole from gambling. And you know, I met this guy online, moved in with him, and very quickly things just continued to get worse. And I know this sounds like a war story, but it's important because I need you guys to understand the kind of person I was. So I moved in with this guy, and like very quickly, I'd known him for like a month. It was kind of crazy. And we're using together. He'd been sober from heroin for 5 years, and we were like smoking weed together. And then I was finally like, "Hey, so like I do this thing. Do you want to try it?" And he tried it with me. Probably about 6 months into that, the COVID shutdown happened, and we had nowhere to go, nothing to do. So we just got high. Right? We were getting money from the government. This was like the perfect thing. I didn't have to go home and uphold appearances to my parents. I'd make up excuses of like, oh, I'm sick or I have a cold or whatever. So COVID happened. 6 months after that, my buddy Tim, who I talked about, who passed away, he shot me up for the first time. And I asked him to, and he warned me before I did it. He said, "Are you sure this ruined my life? Right? This ruined my life. It is incredibly addicting and you won't want to stop." And I said, "Yeah, I don't care, do it." And he told me that he wouldn't teach me. He's like, "I'm only going to do it for you. I don't want you learning how to do this on your own." And so I just like learned how to do it on my own, on like trial and error or through Google and stuff like that. A year after that, I was sleeping in my car, sleeping in friends' houses. I was 130 pounds. I was in and out of psychosis. I was prostituting. I was stealing money. I was stealing from stores and selling them to drug dealers. You name it. I was doing whatever I could to get my hands on that drug, right? And like, this is a person that has a college degree, right? Like did pretty okay in high school, had a great set of friends, has a beautiful family, had everything provided for them in life. And here I am, bottom of the barrel. I cannot stop. I cannot stop. All I needed to do was put that needle in my arm. I got to this stage in February of 2021 where I was either going to kill myself or run away. And I chose to run away, right? And there's this old like joke within the recovery community that drug addicts like to run away to Florida. Because we do, for some reason. So we run away to Florida, and again, this is how diluted your thinking is when you're using substances like this. It's the middle of a nor'easter. I don't bring my debit card. I don't bring my ID. I bring my dirty laundry, a pound of weed, and a bag of meth and some random pills in a random container. And we just leave, right? I don't tell anybody where I'm going. I don't tell my partner where I'm going. I don't tell my parents where I'm going. I don't tell my friend where I'm going. And we get pulled over in Georgia, and I end up in jail for 3 days, right? And my family thinks I'm dead. My best friends think I'm dead. Nobody knows where I am. They're freaking out. And I finally make that call after day 3, because they didn't give us a call on the first day, to my parents. And they're like, "We're coming to get you." And I'm like, "Nope, don't worry about it. Gutting out on PR. Don't have to pay anything. I'm going to Florida." Right? So like, that's the selfishness of this disease. Knowing that both of my parents are freaking out and they're worried, sick, and they just want me home and they want me safe. What I want more than anything is to just get away, right? Get away from up here, get away from how I feel in here, and as far south as I could get. I was like, I'm making it to Key West, right? I never finish anything I set my mind to. I'm going to Key West. So I was homeless in Florida for like 3 months. I never made it to Key West. Surprise! I drive back up. I sit with my parents, and the thing that really breaks my heart still to this day is I remember having this conversation with them and looking both of them in the eye and being like, if I have to stick a needle in my arm every day to feel okay, then that's what I'm going to do. And I fully believed that was the only option for me to feel okay. Fast forward a little more. I had a family friend, Joan Burke. She grew up in Easton. She lives in Easton. I grew up with her around me. And when she found out I got arrested, she texted me every single day. This guy Eddie's number and said, "Call Eddie, Eddie McGrath. Yeah. Call Eddie." Every day. And I'm like, "Yeah, Joan, whatever. Can I have $50 for food?"
Yeah.
And she would send me $50, but I had to send her the receipt of the food, which I did. It was like the only honest thing that I did with her. Then comes the day. I'm sitting in my friend's basement. I took like 4 tabs of acid. I'm like coming up on this peak. I'm like covered in my own blood because I can't find a vein to shoot up in. There's crickets everywhere because my friend had a chameleon. The cat got into the bag of crickets. So I'm like losing my mind. There's crickets everywhere. Covered in my own blood. And I had this like out of body experience, like looking down at the situation that I'm in. And I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Right? So I didn't call Eddie right then. I waited till I was done having my fun. And I called Eddie like the next day and I was like, "Hey, I need some help. I've got this court date coming up and like, I can use meth in moderation. Like you probably wouldn't even be able to tell that I'm a drug addict. And like, I don't want to do the steps. I don't really care about the God stuff, but like my lawyer's just telling me I need to do this or like I'm going to end up in jail. So what are we doing?" Right? And he told me to come down July 7th. July 7th rolls around. I can't do it. I back out. He's calling me 4, 5, 6, 7 times. I don't pick up the phone because I'm absolutely terrified of giving up this one thing that's bringing me a sense of comfort and ease. Right? This one thing that makes me feel like I'm okay. Then like my kidneys started shutting down a little bit. And I was like, okay, I think I should probably go to treatment.
Yeah.
So that is the kind of person that I was before I came into treatment. Right? My first week, it was all about, I don't want to be here. This is stupid. I don't want to do the steps. I'm going home after 30 days. I know myself. Like, you can't change me. I'm not praying. I'm not meditating. Miserable, right? Irritable. Still a little crazy. I thought I figured out a new way to talk to God by scribbling on paper and deciphering it. And I love talking about the fact that was the person I was because that is not the person that I am now, right? And also to highlight the fact that being my first time in treatment, I think a lot of people discount people coming in for the first time. I know they did for me. They'd be like, "Oh, it's your first time, you'll be back," right? Like relapse is a part of recovery. Like it took me 4 or 5 times. It'll probably take you the same. IV meth use is impossible to get sober from. You're not going to make it your first time. And yet here I am, right? Because what happened when I showed up to Rockland Recovery is that people loved me. Right? People loved me until I could love myself. They also told me I couldn't leave, even though but like, 3 weeks in, I'm like, all right, getting up to 30 days, I'm gonna go home. And I sat down with my clinician, he said, "Dude, just give it another 30 days and see what happens." Right? And begrudgingly, I agreed. And that's the best decision I ever made in my life. Because during that time, I said, you know what? I'm going to do the work because like, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? I become a better person. That 3 weeks of clarity that I had gained, I started to recognize just how much heartache that I had put myself through, just how much heartache I had put my family through. And so I threw myself into the work, right? And my foundation is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I work that with sponsees. I go to meetings, I do commitments and service above the group level. I do stuff like this, kind of like exactly like Kevin said, because this thing isn't going anywhere. Right? Once I'm an addict, I'm always an addict. It doesn't matter if you take the drugs and alcohol away from me, I'll find something else. And so I choose to get addicted to healing. I choose to get addicted to my recovery because that's what's important to me. Because if I don't have that, I can't have anything else in my life. So I make it through treatment. Like I said, I jump in and I get involved in the recovery community. I start going to meetings. I start doing service work. And then eventually I get a job at Rockland as an RSS. Right? That's the first opportunity I have to give back. And a lot of the things I learned at Rockland were about working with the symptom, right? So the alcohol and drugs were symptomatic of the fact that I was in a lot of pain under there. And I had a lot more digging to do to figure out how to navigate that trauma that I had been through in my life. How to navigate the loss, the anxiety, the alienation, all of these different things that I had experienced. And what they did is they provided me a different lens with which to look within myself. Right? No longer did I have to look at myself as someone that was defective or broken, but I could look at myself as somebody that was capable of finding purpose in pain, right? Making something that was meaningless meaningful. And that has really carried me through my entire recovery. All those people that I talked about at the beginning have all, like I said, had a profound impact in my recovery process, right? Eddie Walsh in particular was one of the first people that we lost. If it wasn't for Eddie Walsh, I wouldn't have gone to sober living. Right? I sat down with him, we talked for an hour, and he said, dude, if you can learn one thing from me, it's go to sober living. That's the only time that I do well. Right? Danny Karen taught me how to smile. John Anastas taught me how to be a goofball. Okay? Bobby Strout, one of my friends from New Hampshire, he showed me love. We as addicts, I think there's still such a stigma. Like, we're not bad people. We're just hurt. Right? We're just a little lost. But we're really so capable of providing so much more to our communities. Like I said, I went through this process. I went back to school. I'm currently a clinician at Rockland Recovery, where I went through treatment. I have the honor of giving back every day, right? And I do that for work. I get paid to give back. So I don't count that as service work, right? I make sure that I do things outside of that. I constantly have people that I'm sponsoring because that's what's important to me and that's what gets me better. Sitting down with another alcoholic or an addict and helping them feel a little bit less alone, well, that makes my pain have purpose, right? And that's what's most important to me. I think if we can take one thing away from things like this is that the more that we show up and engage in community, the better we get as a whole, right? Rockland's tagline is the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think that being in this room tonight, we can prove that point, right? That each of us has the opportunity to reach out, make connections, touch each other in a different way, and have resources that we can use for family members and friends that are still struggling with substance use. Because it's not just opiates. Nobody is exempt from this thing, right? It doesn't matter if the person that you love is an alcoholic. It doesn't matter if the person that you love is using cocaine. We're dying, right? In our hordes. So I'll wrap up there. I just want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'll hang around a little bit afterwards. If anybody has any questions or would like me to reach out to anybody that they know that might need some help, I'm totally available for sponsorship and stuff like that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the speakers. Everybody in there at the tables. They'll be here for a little bit. Plenty of food. Come around to the tables, get some resources, and we're here too if anybody has any questions for us. Okay,
Great
thank
job,
you.
guys.